He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Reynardo. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Reynardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lapino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? This burning sword from the south was terrific for barbecuing sausages and ravens. Reynardo had been the terror of the sandcastles when he was 2. People were frightened these days. Just 2 weeks past, Reynardo had sneaked through an empty town and listened to the ravens caw about the Emperor's new taste in ritual sacrifice. The village looked so peaceful. Were the villagers hiding somewhere? Of course not. No matter how much he searched, he would only find ravens here. Well, no sense collecting more materials. It was time to make something pointy. He could learn new skills, if only he'd take the time to figure out which. Oh, sweet! A gem. All he needed now was a workbench, and he could slot it into his gauntlet. This sword from the frigid north was really useful for making popsicles and birdicles. What's there?
sec. How are you guys fixed for life insurance?
Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Where had the mad rabbit got to? Dirty and bloody, Reynardo finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Reynardo recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And he felt sure she had one for him.
On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power.
I know how you feel about me, baby. I know you want to be with me. Reynardo said. What? The Emperor's evil, babe. I'm nice. Remember how nice I was back in school? You were an idiot in school. You said I was funny, said Reynardo, starting not to like how the conversation was going. The Emperor pulled me out of an alley. Don't tell me he's evil. Yeah, but did you ever wonder why? No, I didn't. Why don't you ask him? Well, because I know why. He wants to sacrifice you. You can tell him that when he interrogates you. Can't we just start this over? But Zenobia shut him in the hold of the ship. He had no one to explain anything to until he was brought to the Emperor's interrogators. After that, it was just screaming. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Reynardo shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty.
Ooh, Reynardo loved to improve his gear.
He was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things. Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough.
This sword from the mystical East could make time itself slow for you.
What exactly was Lupino up to this time? You could see the wheels spinning inside his head. They made Reynardo dizzy, in fact.
These things really slice like ham. So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Reynardo hiding inside a monstrous watermelon.
What could possibly go wrong? Thought Reynardo. Oh, go ahead. I'm sure you know better, said Lupino. It would be fun to try out that one. And here was a handy workbench. This chest smelled kind of funky. He hoped he didn't get it in his clothes.
to traitors!
Caught the raven.
Reynardo slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek. How soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She became smoke. And he noticed he had a blade to his throat. Stay a while, purred a familiar voice. Did you really think you could capture me? Zenobia said as her ship lifted off. Now I just wanted some privacy, Reynardo said. Reynardo knew she still had feelings for him. Maybe he could just cut to the chase. But was timing right for that? Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? And he told her why. His Imperial Majesty wanted to bring the lost gods back. They could make him immortal. But to seal the bargain, he needed a sacrifice. Someone who truly loved him. You're lying. She was furious. You can't prove that. I can. And so, they set sail for the Nexus. The scientists at the Observatory have resurrected one of his victims. Well, he's not exactly alive, but it can talk, and it can't lie. You took a big risk. You know, I could just cast a spell to make you tell me where the rebel base is, and you wouldn't consider that cheating? She frowned. Ugh, fine. Let's go get your witness. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Reynardo had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. This is quite the view, he thought. Reynardo hoped his mother wasn't watching.
that somebody had been watching.
She caught up with him. Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic? Why? Would you want to join in? Oh, no, I'd destroy his books and... All right, I suppose I wouldn't.
She stopped, troubled. He ran on. Reynardo had heard stories of a dungeon where chests were filled with potions and weapons. Fairy tales. Reynardo had been searching for a way to save the rebellion. Lapina wanted to capture and interrogate Zenobia. But if he could show her proof of her father's madness, maybe she would join the rebellion. Reynardo wondered what would happen if he jumped. Would he be rescued by an emergency platform?
Snack time, Bob! Boy, some people were just liable to explode if you upset them. Reynardo had a lot of crafting materials. Now all he needed was a crafting bench. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The ravens had taken care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared around, shocked. The scientists had been neutral. They had no part in the rebellion. "Take me to your council," she said, shaken. "I have things to tell them." It was what Reynardo had gambled on. The Zenobia would turn against her father once she knew his madness. But the rebel base was secret. Could he really risk taking the Emperor's daughter there, even if she did love him? Reynardo reached Lapino by Farspeaker Toad, the one creature the ravens had left alive at the observatory. "I'll meet up with you at the base," Lapino said through the toad. "Good thinking." Reynardo gave him the coordinates. "There's a shuttle here I can borrow." Reynardo found Zenobia in the chart room. "I've been having awful dreams," she said. "Dead kittens and worse. I thought they were only dreams, you know. Why would anyone want the lost gods back? In those days, the favorite of a god could become immortal." She held herself and shivered. "He wants to become an eater of souls." "Well, I'm not afraid of dying. Just dying of boredom," Reynardo said, but she didn't laugh. Silence fell as they flew towards the ruins of the city of Ubar, where the rebellion leadership was hiding. If Zenobia couldn't help them fight off her father, no one could. As they touched the ground, he could smell the ravens and hear their hungry caws in the distance. "They're probably looking for me," she said. "You go on ahead." She had that fiery look in her eyes that he'd always loved. It was a bit odd, though. How easy she'd been to convince. It was what he'd gambled on, but he'd expected more of an argument. She'd always loved to argue. She considered it the fastest way to the truth. Maybe she'd long suspected the truth. Sometimes all it took was taking the bandages from your eyes. That must be it, he told himself. It was time to make a new sword. It was definitely easier to fight inanimate objects. felt a little better.
The mysterious sword from the east made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. He felt like Tarzan.
I wonder what happens if I go that way. They caught their breath under a ruined arch. "It's beautiful," she said. "This was the library of Ubar," he said. "Your father's ravens thought they had an ancient book." She nodded. Was she crying? This was exactly what I wanted, Reynardo thought. To turn her to our cause. So, why do I feel something is terribly wrong? Because nothing ever goes this smoothly, is why. These things could really use a hand.
Open, says me. The long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. He was on fire. So far, so good. All coming back to him. He wondered what he'd remember next. The right jewel could really give you an edge. The wrong, well, it still looked pretty, didn't it? The council toads swarmed around Zenobia. Shocked she was there, shocked she had changed sides. Then, the walls exploded. He heard toads croaking, "Oh, the ravens!" Blackbirds were pouring through holes everywhere. "It's a trap!" cried the council speaker. In the confusion, he saw flashes of magic. Then Zenobia being hustled off by Imperial troops. So, she had betrayed him after all. Reynardo ran for his ship. The Farfarer flew into the clouds, barely losing the Imperial ravens pursuing him. The rebellion was lost, and he had lost it. There was nothing to do but find Zenobia and make her pay for her treachery. His heart ached. He still loved her. But he had trusted her, and he had been a fool. She would be back at the fleet, gloating with her mad, bloodthirsty father. For all Reynardo knew, she was helping him bring back the old lost gods back from their exile. Reynardo landed in the middle of the Imperial fleet. The rebels were losing badly. Without leadership, it was a slaughter. Reynardo felt strangely free, trying not to think about how he had lost the war, trying not to think about how he had loved Zenobia, blinded himself to her treachery. That's what it meant to be a hero. To keep on fighting after the most bitter of betrayals. To never know if you could trust anyone. Cats. What a waste of fur. You never knew where the road would take you, thought Reynardo. Boy, someone had spent a lot of money for a graduation present. try it. You're hooked.
What had happened to Lupino? Had the Mad Rabbit fled to safety? Or was he forlornly carrying on like the few rebels Reynardo could see here or there? Ugh, it didn't matter anymore. All there was slash and spin, parry and lunge, over and over as he fought his way across the fleet. All there was finding the girl he'd once loved, who had used his love against him and putting as big a hole in her heart as she'd left in his.
This thing really needed a roof.
And suddenly, Zenobia was there, advancing on Lupino. So the Mad Rabbit had survived. "Save me, or I'm done for!" screamed Lupino. Zenobia turned, showing her teeth in a smile. "You're alive!" Reynardo ran towards the witch. "Lupino's the one who betrayed you!" she shouted. "He warned my father!" Reynardo sank his sword into the witch before she could fool him again. She stared at him, heartbroken. "No! Lupino's the traitor!" Then he felt a knife in his back. "I'm afraid she's right," said the Mad Rabbit. "Ain't I a stinker?" Then the sun went out.
Reynardo stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. But he'd learned another true thing. Lupino was a traitor.
Reynardo had suspected there was something wrong with the mad rabbit, but now he knew there was malice behind his goofiness. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced, or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Reynardo. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Reynardo had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Reynardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens?